What up, YouTube? So I got a very personal PM, and it was about a dude, a professional black guy. He's actually engaged to a black woman, and he's having second thoughts about moving forward because he feels like it's a loveless relationship. He talked about how everything looks good on paper, and what that means is he's smart, she's smart, he has the degree, she has the degree, he has no kids, she has no kids, he has decent credit, she has decent credit, oh, she comes from a two-parent home, so does he, so everything looks good on paper. So if the computer, was to match some people up, it would put them together. And he said everything looks good on paper, but it seems like it's a loveless relationship. Okay, they'll get married, they'll live in a decent neighborhood, kids will go to a good school, she'll be driving a Lexus, he'll be in his BMW, this, that, and the third, but at the end of the day, it just seems like there's no chemistry there. There doesn't really seem like there's a vibe, a friendship, a deeper connection, apart from the superficial things that can be measured. There's no intangibles to the relationship. Their relationship, it makes sense on a compatibility level, but in terms of the small things, that glue, right, that you really can't measure, it's not there. And he knows he wasn't supposed to do this, and we talked about it. And he compared his relationship to a friend. Okay, his fiance, she's not black. I don't want to say what she is, but she's not black, and they don't necessarily have the compatibility in terms of what this guy has with his black fiance. But he said that he feels like his buddy's relationship seems a whole lot more meaningful because there's a level of chemistry. So it's like he wishes he can mash the two together and he would have his ideal relationship. It looks good on paper, it looks good formally, and it looks good informally. But right now his relationship is perfect formally, but in terms of the informal, it's not there. And his buddy's relationship is horrible in terms of the formalities, but informally it works well. Here's what I'll say, and I've made this point before. When it comes to black relationships, I kind of feel the same way you feel. My biggest fear is being caught up in that sort of situation. I've not talked to a girl because of that. Everything looks good on paper, she's educated, this, that, and the third, but you can almost tell there's not going to be a vibe or chemistry. And I say that not in the sense to saying that, this is why black relationships don't work, or y'all need to move on. No, because it's something that we can fix. Let me say that again. It's something that we can fix. So if you feel like you have that same sort of problem in terms of the fear of being caught up in that loveless relationship that looks good on paper, you got to listen carefully. A while ago, I talked about how we treat each other is bullshit. Okay, the women will approach men and say, hey, I have a job, I have no kids, that's all I need to say, and you're supposed to choose me. Men will do the same. We'll come on and say, yo, I'm a black dude and I have a job and I have a degree. What more do you need from me? That should be it, right? And that's how we treat each other. And if you think about it, those relationships are the ones that tend to look good on paper. Oh, she has no kids and she has a job. Oh, he has a degree. But we're missing something else. And I say that because we're more than just our jobs and our degrees. Okay, if I'm trying to get to know somebody, right, I want to know who you are on a complete level. So I want to know 100% of who you are. Honestly, 20% of that is going to be your education and what you do. So there's still 80% that I need to know, okay, in terms of who you are and how I'm going to connect to you, right? So yeah, I meet a chick and she's educated, I'm educated, she has a career, I have a career, great, 20%, right? We're only at 20% compatibility, but there's still 80% that we still have to work on. And unfortunately, we never get to that 80% because we stop. And I talked about how one of the things that we can actually take from interracial dating is the whole idea of having to go deeper. Okay? Like I said before, a professional black woman isn't going to approach a white dude and say, look at me, I have a job and I have no kids. What is new about that? That's standard in terms of what he's used to. So there has to be a deeper connection. What else? Oh, what are you into? What do you do for fun? Outside of work, what are the things you like? Oh, I like to go skiing. I like to go horseback riding. So there's more that is needed to make that connection, especially when you have to break that racial barrier in terms of what's acceptable. Right? If you're going to go against what is seen as socially acceptable, you better have a deep connection, right? Same thing for the men. You know, I've seen dudes who want to come on and say, yo, I got a degree, that's enough, right? But I don't want to say they step their game up for the non-black girl, but they know that there has to be more. You know, you're not going to show up and tell an Asian girl you have a degree and no kids, and she's supposed to, you know, say, oh, wow, you know, you're doing big things. That's standard behavior in terms of what she's used to. So there's more. Oh, what music do you listen to? Oh, what do you like to eat? So there's more to the equation outside of level of education and career, because you need that to break the whole racial barrier, okay? You better be connected with somebody on a deeper level if you're going to go against what your parents want, right? You know, you're not going to have a, you know, lackluster connection with somebody and enter a relationship knowing that you may be kicked out of your own racial background, or you may be just outed in terms of whatever, you know, networks you belong to. So there has to be more, especially when you're dealing with interracial relationships involving black people. There has to be more. There has to be a deep level connection. And like I said, that is something that we need to apply to our own relationships in terms of black on black relationships. Don't stop. You know, I get upset when we stop. Oh, I got a job. You have a job. We're supposed to click. What else do you do? Who are you as a person? Like I said, what you do for a living, let's say that only comprises 20% of who you are. But there's a whole other 80% in terms of what makes you you. I got to find out about that. What's your view on this? You know, what do you do for fun? Right? What were you doing before you were successful? There's a whole bunch of things that you need to know to connect with somebody. You know, I always talk about sense of humor. I think a sense of humor is a great tool to know if you're compatible with somebody. If what makes you laugh makes her laugh, you may have a connection, because I have a weird sense of humor, right? And you have to be a certain type to understand what makes me laugh. And I can almost guarantee you, if you find what I find to be funny, right, stuff that's not even meant to be funny, if you can share my humor, I can almost guarantee we have that connection there. And that has little to do with our level of education. Right? It's just a personality thing. You know, what do you do for fun? You know, how did you have fun when you were broke? Right? You know, that's a good, you know, a test to see if there's some compatibility. Right? It's easy to talk about what you do when you have money. Oh, I go to wine tasting, or I go to upscale clubs, or, you know, I collect this and I collect that. That's great. What did you do when you're younger and you were broke? Okay? You know, in terms of chilling and hanging out. You know, so there's a whole bunch of things that we're just not doing, to be real with you. And like I said, it's there, we're just not exploring it. So my advice to you, I know I, you know, did a lot of rambling, but I would recommend that you and your fiance try to understand each other better, to be real with you. And if you really can't find that deeper connection, you might as well pull out. But like I said, you need to try. You guys have to go deeper than just the superficial. Okay? You know, you have to get really personal. It's as simple as that. It's not enough. If you really think about it, it really isn't enough to come on and act as if that's the only thing that you need. We're too diverse as human beings to choose somebody simply because they're educated and they ain't got no kids. Right? I'm sorry. You know, you got to do better. So you guys are there. You know, don't get me wrong. You know, the whole formal compatibility in terms of job and career, that's important. That's so important that it's not even funny. Okay? You know, just because your boy has a good chemistry with his girlfriend doesn't mean that they're going to work, because like you said before, both of them don't really have that career and they're not really doing well financially. So good chemistry is only going to take you so far. right? And looking good on paper is only going to take you so far. So it's really both. You guys are 50% there, so I don't want you to act like you have to throw what you have away, because it's still a good situation, but you guys just have to learn each other better. Go deeper. You guys stopped. You guys figured out that you guys had good jobs, that you guys were moving in the same direction financially, career-wise, but then you guys stopped and you didn't go deeper. And so now you have to really know her better. She has to know you better, right? Because it can happen. And then, chances, hopefully you guys will have that chemistry, but maybe you won't have chemistry. But at least you know. Right now, you don't know. You don't know if you and your fiance have chemistry, so that's what you have to figure out. So, that's my vid. Hopefully you guys can, take what you need from it and apply it to your own lives. Let me know what you think. Take it easy. God bless.